Hi, my friends. Today we're going to talk about how to choose your keywords for your book to put into Amazon's back end, the book profile you're building. They call it metadata. So it's the stuff that your readers don't see, but it's the stuff that helps your readers find your book. So while this may seem like it could be really easy and kind of obvious, it does require some thought, and I want to spend some time talking about it. So I'm actually going to spend an entire video talking about keywords. That's how important it is, okay? So when you upload your book to the KDP platform, that's Kindle Direct Publishing, it's either for your ebook or for your hard copy, and they can have the same keywords for either version of the book. You can select up to 7 keywords to include with that metadata. And again, that's not visible to your customers, so it doesn't matter if they look a little funky or look a little complicated or something. We'll talk about that. Your keywords can be individual words, so one word, or they can be a short phrase. You're limited to, I believe, 50 characters. That's the last I saw on this. I don't think Amazon has a reason to change that. 50 characters is a pretty long, when you think about a phrase, it's a pretty long phrase. So we'll talk about how to utilize the character limit to the best of your ability. And what this does, the keywords we're going to talk about, the strategy behind them is all about attracting the right people to your book for the right reasons, okay? So let's dive in. First, just remember that keywords are extremely important because not only do they help readers find you, it helps with your rankings in certain categories, and it encourages Amazon to actually market your book for you, meaning if you pick your keywords wisely, the algorithm will really help put your book at the top of the search results for a particular keyword or category or something to that effect. So on top of people actually finding you with, when they type in the exact keyword you have chosen, Amazon will start working for you when your keywords are appropriately formatted and all of that. We'll get into that as well. And by the way, you'll hear me talk about categories a little bit. Categories are separate, and we're going to cover them in the next video because they're equally as important. But keywords are compatible with categories. They're in addition to them, and they should work with them. So you're going to want to think about these things together. So don't skip this video if you are planning on using Amazon. Keywords are important. Let's get into them. So for this example, for this video, I'm going to use a book about divorce, and it's, maybe it's healing from divorce or finding yourself after divorce or whatever your particular theme within that category, if you will, is. That's how you're going to center your keywords. So for example, if I'm a reader and I'm looking for a book, maybe a memoir or something else about divorce, maybe I'm going through divorce and I am struggling with feeling like I'm able to find myself a rebuild or feel good after this or feel good during it, I might go to Amazon and search for something like how to heal after divorce, how to survive a divorce, divorce support, divorce stories, successful divorce stories, rebuilding after divorce. So start thinking about how your theme can bring out some keywords that your readers will be typing in to Amazon's search bar, because those are the keywords you're going to want to utilize in your metadata. And we're going to continue talking about that. But that when we're talking about keywords, it's something that the readers will search for. It's not like you're stuffing a bunch of keywords into your cell, into the fields, if you will, like divorce, marriage, kids, family, happy. That's not a phrase. That's not something your readers will search for. That's kind of a string of keywords. So when we're talking about keywords in this context, it's a phrase or a word like divorce. That's a big one, right? That could be a keyword for this book. So How to build your list of keyword ideas. You're just going to start by brainstorming. Cast your net widely. Just have fun with this. Be broad. You don't have to get too particular yet. We're going to narrow down, but start just with a blank slate. You can refine it later, and you're going to need to, because you have to figure out how to identify your top 7, because you are limited to only 7. But think about where you can come up with some of these keywords. Now, Amazon gives some suggestions to readers, to authors, I should say. Talk about the setting of your book. Like if you are writing from Italy or, Midwest or whatever, those could be different types of keywords. Character types, if you have like a specific role that you play, maybe ex-wife or wife or spouse, or maybe it's your profession, maybe you're a doctor or a nurse or something like that, and you're healing from, maybe it's a therapist, you're healing from divorce as a therapist, right? Character roles. This is something like if you had a female lead character, that might pull readers towards your book. That might be more applicable in other genres, but character roles could maybe come into play for a memoir. Plot themes. You're going to hear me talk about themes till you're blue in the face. Divorce, hope, healing, surviving, thriving, that type of word. Discovering yourself, self-discovery, rebuilding, grief, hope, those words, right? Those are theme words. Then the story tone. If you have a happy story or, a feel-good story, a dark story, something like that. So keep those in mind. Those are kind of some suggested jumping off points, but we're going to dive more into how to expand your keyword thinking here. When you are trying to come up with the keywords for your book, you're first going to want to try Amazon's autocomplete search function. Remember, when you go into Amazon's search bar and you start typing, it'll give you a whole list of potential matches for the first 5 letters or 7 letters or 2 letters of your search, your potential search, right? So if you start typing in divorce, what comes after the word divorce in Amazon's autocorrect or autocomplete, that's what they call it, autocomplete search function. So you could have like divorce stories, divorced woman, that type of thing. Go through and see what they suggest, because typically those are the terms that have been most commonly searched. And here's a little tip. Amazon knows you, because most likely you're going to go onto Amazon.com. You're going to already be logged into your own account. If you don't have your own account, it could still remember cookies, whatever. It could still remember what you've already searched for from that particular browser. So go into incognito mode or private mode. There is a way you can do that when you open up a new browser tab. You may have to Google how to do it depending on what your browser is. But you can, it's really easy to do. And what it is it kind of erases the cookies and the data from your particular device. Not erases it from your device, but it blocks Amazon from reading that. So then it won't influence the search results that you're getting. This is important because you don't want your own previous searches to influence how these autocomplete lists are coming up for you. So always remember that when you are doing keyword searches, especially even in Google, this is something you can do so that your previous search data doesn't come into play. Anyway, when you're in Amazon's search bar, start typing in some particular words like thriving or, surviving, rebuilding, therapist, divorce, whatever the keywords that you're kind of playing around with. Divorce obviously would be a big one if that's what your book is about. But if your book is about hope or grief, that could really touch a lot of areas. So you may need to expand that, grief after death, grieving after the death of fill in the blank, or whatever. You might have to play with this in multiple ways to see what comes up. Add those to your list. If you have, a full phrase in mind, search for that and see if it's been searched for before. If it has, it's probably a good keyword or key, we'll call it a keyword, but we really mean like a phrase or a word. It's probably a good keyword to include on your potential keyword list, because if it's been searched before, people are obviously looking for it, right? If you come up with a phrase or a word that really solidly is connected to your book, but it's never been searched for before, that might be okay because you're branching out in a new area, or it might just indicate that there's not a huge market searching for that phrase. And so it's not to sway you against from using that term in your potential list. You just have to think about some other factors. You can also check out that sidebar where, let's say you searched for the title of a book or the name of a book or something that you'll see on the sidebar there's categories listed, and it's like family, and then there's subcategories under that, and then there's subcategories under those. So play with where your keywords are leading you to, like what's under divorce, how many categories are under divorce, and subcategories and subcategories. So use those as a way to help build your keywords. Sometimes the categories you choose are the same as your keywords and vice versa. So and also when you choose particular keywords, that may ensure that you end up in a particular category that is helpful for your rankings. Okay, so keep that in mind. We'll talk more about categories. Remember, don't feel like you're missing out on something. I haven't talked about it yet. So when you use the keyword tool, you can kind of get some data on what type of keywords have been searched for, how many times, etc. So consider using a couple tools outside of the Amazon platform, because Amazon won't give you that data, but something like Publisher Rocket, for example, will give you how many hits particular words or phrases have had, and it gives you some sales figures for like top selling books in that area or products in general. So play around with something like Publisher Rocket. There's also one called KW Finder. You can search a few words for free per day. I think it's 5 words per day. That's free. So you can kind of see how they're ranking competitively with other words in that area. So check out some tools like that to see if there are some big hitters. So now that you have kind of a big list, you've gone through the autocomplete Amazon search bar, maybe you've done a couple keyword finders, you looked at the categories, you've just brainstormed on what your book is about. You should have a solid page and a half, or 2 pages of keyword phrases, hopefully. Just get creative with this, right? But now you have to narrow this down to 7 words. And again, when we say keywords, we include phrases as well. So you really have to bear in mind a couple things that will help your strongest keywords come to the surface, okay? When you think about a keyword that has a lot of hits, you may originally say like, okay, that's a good one. However, think about it like this. When you have a word, let's say divorce is giving you millions of hits, of course, because there are things all over the place that touch that world, that touch that term, divorce. So what it means is that if you use that as your keyword, as one of your keywords, and you come up in the search for divorce, you're going to have so much competition. Think of the number of books alone just touching the term divorce. So it may be good, but it also may lead you into a bigger pool than you really want to compete in, because you don't necessarily want to compete in a pool that has books on how to hire a divorce lawyer, or what forms you need to complete in your divorce, or custody battle tips or whatever, right? You don't want those types of books competing with your book, because they're just not solid competitors. You don't want readers who are looking for something else to have your book come up, or vice versa. So just because a word, the lesson here is, just because a word has a lot of hits doesn't mean it's a great fit, but you don't need to discount it either. And then look at the opposite end of that spectrum. If your word doesn't have a lot of hits, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but it probably doesn't mean it's going to come up in a lot of search results, right? So the higher the number, the better, typically, but you kind of want to hit the middle range more likely, or kind of lower end of the high end, if that makes sense. You don't want to be down at the bottom of the barrel, but you definitely shouldn't try to aim for the very top where 20 million other products and books and things exist in the Amazon world that will be within that search result listing. But also think of the intent behind your readers. What is their intent when they're typing in a keyword? I, as a reader looking for a book about surviving after divorce, in my head, I'm going to want to find a book that gives me hope, that tells me I'm going to be able to rebuild after this horrible thing. I'm probably going through a divorce or thinking about it and wanting to know, can I handle it? How do I heal from it? Is it something that I can manage on my own? Where is the support for this type of thing? So I'm going to go to this search bar and type in how to heal after divorce, or how to deal with divorce, or, think of how the words you would use to your friend or something like that when you're describing your book. You want to use kind of a natural phrase. You don't necessarily want to have, that divorce book, heal, person, wife, husband, that string of random words. That's not my intended meaning and reason why I come to search for your particular book, or a book that meets your description, right? So I want to find a book that meets my needs, and I'm typically going to search with words that illustrate or reflect my needs. So if you are doing research and you have a term that your readers are going to use, but it's ranking on the lower end, that's okay. You're matching their intent. So don't necessarily disregard it because of some data. If you feel strongly like it reflects what your book is about and it's going to help readers find your book because it's matching the words that you think they will use to find your book. You also want to just look at the competition, see what words the competition is using. If you have some comp titles that are similar to yours or kind of in the same area, what categories and keywords are they using? And again, you can find this a couple different ways. You don't have to spend hours going down the black hole of what are my competition doing, but get an idea of where they're kind of living within that searching space. And then again, make sure that it's up, you're utilizing your characters. And it can even be a longer term. You don't have to use something short like divorce, or after divorce, post-divorce. You can make it more of a sentence or a phrase, if you will, as long as it's utilizing and under that 50 character limit. Think about whether or not your keywords are also going to be like an exact phrase that your readers will use, or maybe it's like a phrase match. There's kind of a difference, exact match or a phrase match. So exact match, if I type in healing after divorce, an exact match would lead me to your book if you use those exact keywords. A phrase match would be if I typed in divorce memoir, post-divorce memoir, memoir about divorce, and your book is like, post-divorce healing or something. It's going to hone in on post-divorce, kind of part of your keyword, if you will. So Amazon will allow your book to show up in search results for both exact matches and phrase matches, but you want to think about whether or not there is a reason to use an exact match phrase, or if you want to kind of try to combine some smaller phrases together. So it's something that gets a little into the weeds, thinking about whether or not you want to use exact matches, but go with your gut here. If you think someone's going to search for maybe a couple different specific phrases that can be that are related and sound like they go together, like healing after divorce when husband cheats on you, or whatever. How are you going to ever hit that exact phrase? But you might include cheats or something like that within a keyword that brings your readers to your book. Do you see what I mean? It's kind of a little tricky. You might have to do more research on this, but just think about how your readers are going to be phrasing this, but also how you can utilize you only get 7 keywords with 50 characters each, right? And then once you have your list narrowed down even further, you want to make sure you don't do a couple things. Number one, you don't want to use anything that's already visible in your metadata, like your title or your name, because that's just basically throwing away a keyword. You're already going to get searched on. If I typed in your name, it doesn't have to be a keyword. I'm typing in a field that's already in your book description, if that makes sense, your book profile. You don't want to use words that are like subjective in nature, like best book ever, top memoir, that type of thing. Don't do anything that relates to subjective claims about how this book is going to be perceived by your readers. Is it low quality, high quality, amazing? Those types of subjective words, stay away from them. Stay away from anything misleading. Like if you are if you know your book is very similar to Untamed, which is a huge word that really is going to bring people in one direction, right? One particular book. If your book is similar to that, you're not going to use that title in your keywords. That keyword is something that people probably won't search for when it, within most book descriptions. Like they're not going to, books like Untamed, maybe they will, but they're going to use keywords that are within that book. Like what did she tell in her story in that book? What were the themes that the readers took away from that? So you're not using other comp titles in your keywords, even if your book is very similar to them. Stay away from using their titles. Stay away from words that apply to basically all the books in your genre, or books in general, like book. You're not going to use the word book. Try to stay away from memoir. What does that even mean? Unless it's attached to something like divorce memoir, which again is kind of very, very broad and probably too broad for a keyword. Divorce memoir about what, right? So stay away from words that just throw you into an area that your readers are never going to find you. If they have to search for 1,000 little pages to find you, it doesn't help you at all. If you have, if there's a word that is associated with your book that can be commonly misspelled, you're not necessarily going to want to include that into your keywords. Amazon doesn't like that. It's like trying to capitalize on people's ignorance, if you will. I mean, if someone misspells your name, they don't use that as a keyword, unless there's like a translation issue. This is not including something like if your book is translated into Spanish or whatever, and there could be a couple different spellings for similar words. That's not what this is about. But don't capitalize on errors or variants of words that are related to your book. You can't use names of Amazon programs like KDP Select. You can't use that because if someone's searching for that, your book would come up in the search results and it's not relevant, but they also won't let you do that. And you can't use anything in quotation marks. They just won't, the algorithm won't even index that word. So it's like throwing it away. So just to summarize, you want something that has a decent search volume, but not too high, not too low. You want something that's relevant to your book, that illustrates the reader's intent, that really connects with their intent. And you want to take a look at your competition and see if you are even in the general area of the categories and words that they've selected, to see if you're going to even be in the list with them, right? And then remember to use don't be shy using longer keywords and phrases, because you have those characters available. That can really help you out because you don't have to have an exact match to show up in search results. So include a few smaller phrases that add up to one big phrase, if you will. And again, just, get creative here. Don't feel like you're stuck with these. You can always go back and change your keywords at a later date. You probably should go back and reassess them once in a while, at least once maybe after your book launches. go back and reassess and see if your keywords are still on point. See if your, the right readers are finding you, if your sales are low or high, that type of thing. Go back and reassess. So that was a lot about keywords. I want you to come back. We're going to talk about categories. Again, two different things, very related, similar, but separate, and we need to know about both. So please come back and I'll talk more, okay?